And now for our fifth topic, and we're down to the last two, folks. And these are the fun ones. We're going to talk about Driver Man's favorite movie of all time, Gone with the Wind. Actually, I don't know what your favorite movie of all time is. What is your favorite movie of all time, since we're just bringing it up?
Off the top of my head, I think I would say Gladiator.
Gladiator. Huh. Interesting. I do not like that movie. I own it. My favorite movie is Amadeus, so we are very different. But but you are aware of a movie called Gone with the Wind. It, adjusted for inflation, is still the highest grossing film of all time. And you're also aware that there has been some controversy about it. And there has been some controversy as well with some actors. So one of those actors is Queen Latifah. And she wants Gone with the Wind gone. For those of you who don't remember, HBO Max pulled Gone with the Wind but they fully intend to bring it back with contextualization, whether that's like a little text or like an introduction or a documentary explaining the history, which I'm perfectly okay with. She thinks maybe it's time to go away. So she said, let Gone with the Wind be Gone with the Wind, which, disagreement aside, not gonna lie, that was clever. That was clever. So, but Queen Latifah ultimately doesn't want Gone with the Wind to come back. And one of the things that she obviously doesn't like the way that, the South is portrayed in this movie. And, in all fairness, it is a problem. But she also doesn't like how this is like a big, important piece of history for African-American actors, because Hattie McDaniel was like the first woman to win an Oscar. And as Latifah points out, they didn't even let her in the theater until right before she got that award. Someone came outside and brought her into the auditorium. She wasn't even allowed to sit in there. And then she had to read a speech that was written by a studio. That's not what the hell she wanted to say. And then all she could do was play the same kinds of roles. So the opportunities at the time and the way that those in power in that business were relegating us and marginalizing us and not allowing us to grow and thrive after that was just terrible. And a lot of that is still around today. Now, I don't disagree with that necessarily, that's actually all true. But her perspective, it appears, is Gone with the Wind for her as a reminder of the opportunities that they didn't have. Even when Hattie McDaniel is winning an Oscar, she's not getting the opportunities that winning an Oscar would normally, it would normally bring in. So she's obviously upset about that. But then you have someone else, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is also weighed in, and he's got a much more measured response. And he says, what we need is a way to present art within its historical context so the works can still be available and appreciated for achievements, but not admired for their cultural failings. The easiest way would be to include an introductory explanation, filmed or written, that explains that the work contains harmful racial or gender stereotypes that were acceptable at the time, but which we now know are harmful. Links to further discussions and the information also could be provided. That is the bare basics of what we should do to emphasize that these portrayals are no longer acceptable. To do nothing is a tactic endorsement of their destructive messages. And like vaping, prolonged exposure causes damage to our children. I think that's kind of cute. I don't vape, by the way. We put a warning label on one. Why not another? Now, I can actually respect both of these comments. I lean more towards Kareem because I'm a film historian by day. I have written books on film and the Oscars specifically. And I don't believe you should censor art. And I believe in contextualizing things. And I do think that bringing things back with documentation, with contextualization, is really the best middle ground for everyone. Because on the one hand, you cannot deny the artistic achievement of Gone with the Wind. Even people, I remember I used to run like a film club, and one of the people who we watched Gone with the Wind because we were on the AFI list, and one of the people had like the most backhanded comment to that film that I'd ever heard, where he said, "That is the most gorgeous, boring movie I've ever seen." I loved that comment because that's basically him saying like, I don't like this movie, but I can acknowledge like, wow, what a piece of filmmaking. But it's hurtful to people, and one of the things that I hadn't taken into account is like, yeah, we brag about how Hattie McDaniel won this Oscar. She was the first Black person to win an Oscar, and didn't really help her though. No, she went on to making Song of the South 2 years later. So, and she's still playing Mammy. So, anyway, the reason we're bringing this up is because we did talk a little bit about Gone with the Wind and the removal of it, and now with someone else here, because then the question becomes, well, what you start doing this with all the movies, because clearly Breakfast at Tiffany's, Paramount has contextualized that, but no one, for example, has contextualized West Side Story, which isn't brought up in the most racist movies, but hey, Puerto Rican here. The Puerto Rican characters are a little cartoony, and Natalie Wood is putting on brown makeup, and obviously is clearly not Latino. So, do we just start? I'm okay if we have to contextualize everything so that we don't lose it. I'm perfectly okay with that. But what about you? Where do you? So, do you even like Gone with the Wind? I guess I should start with that.
What's funny is I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever actually watched it all the way through. Just for the sake of transparency. I don't think I have.
Okay, well, that's weird.
So yeah, I don't know, but based on what you described, I would say I kind of lean more towards like what you're saying as far as Kareem. The reason being is because it's like, and it's funny, I've been thinking about this like recently because of the current movement. It's like part of the thing with, not to sidetrack too much, but just for a brief moment, racism, part of the reason why a lot of people are still racist is because the parents, teach it to the kids. But part of it is because it's shown in the schools, well, via history. You open the history book, and of course, that that time that there was slavery is going to be in the book in American history. Right. So, they might see that, and then maybe they ask their parents, hey, mommy, daddy, why did that happen? Well, and then they might give their, biased, inappropriate, racial, discriminatory view as to why, and then the kid thinks that way, and then so on and so on. But I don't think it would. But then to minimize that, to stop that, you would have to erase that from the American history books, right? And just not teach it in school. So then would you also have to get rid of, if you get rid of Gone with the Wind, then would you also have to get rid of other movies like 12 Years a Slave, Django Unchained?
Right.
I don't think you can do that, but you should discuss it in an intelligent manner and explain. And like Kareem says, contextualize it and be like, hey, this is something that happened, so but it's bad and it shouldn't happen again.
Right. Because right now, like the focus is on like on older movies, like Lawrence of Arabia. But it's funny that you mentioned Django Unchained, which I love that movie, by the way.
Me too. I saw it in Vegas.
But I have Black friends who have very mixed feelings of that movie. There are some who absolutely love it. They love it. They think it's great. And then there's some who think like this is a white guy doing racist stereotypes in a modern era, and I think it's offensive. And it's like I can kind of see where they're both coming from, to be honest. Now, on another little side note, because this has actually come up a few times, have you heard the news about Aunt Jemima pancake syrup? Now, the only reason this is relevant is because Aunt Jemima is the pancake syrup, and they have announced today that Aunt Jemima will be rebranded.
I read that. Yeah.
Yep. Now, to be perfectly frank, and please don't think poorly of me, but this is where the learning comes in. I frankly had no issue with Aunt Jemima. It was just syrup to me. But I did see a video by this guy named Sean Rosell. He's an African-American Disney YouTuber, but he did do a little history on Aunt Jemima recently, and when he explained the history of the Aunt Jemima character, I wasn't as, it was like, okay, you know, that seems like a reasonable change we can make. It, you know, just change the name and it's syrup at the end of the day. It's not exactly art. But I do get nervous once we start, because here's the thing, it starts with the movies and then it's like, where's it go next? Does it go to the books, like the fictional books? And what if like the fictional portrayals aren't? What if it needs to go to like the nonfiction books? Like, hey, we don't like we need to take Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf off the bookshelves because that sort of hateful thinking has no place in this world. And you're right, it has no place in this world, but he existed, and this is what he thought. And you know, I've read that book, and it's scary when you read that book. Like it also makes you sick to your stomach to think that someone was out there and breathed the same air as you and me. Mm-hmm. And I think people need to know that. And so that's where I start getting a little concerned once we start removing these things. So, and then of course, yeah, Gone with the Wind might be small potatoes in the grand scheme of things, but hey, we still need to at least acknowledge, I mean, I do think we're at the point in the future where it's like maybe movies like this aren't shown on TV anymore, because you need to give people the option to see the contextualization. So if you go to like a Blu-ray or a streaming where it's like intro or like there's like a screen card before it starts, and that's fine. But I think we are at least at the point where you can't just show it on TV anymore, where people will jump into the middle of it and they think this is okay.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm gonna do it. By the way, Jody says this: if that's the case, the next food that will be tagged is Uncle Ben rice. Well, funny you should mention that. Uncle Ben is not long for this world. Uncle Ben is not long for this world. The Mars company's already said that they're going to change it. But anyway, we have one more topic, and we don't want to be talking about syrup all day. So what about all of you? Do you agree? Do you disagree with what's going on with Gone with the Wind? Who do you side more with, Queen Latifah or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? We'd love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, swim responsibly.